I'm Ben April from Trend Micro, Senior Threat Researcher. Apparently, all the talks I've been in today have made some big comment about, these are my opinions, not my employer. My employer's actually not arguing with what I'm about to say. They would have put me on a plane, but I drove down from my house in New Hampshire, so big deal. So basic gist of this whole talk, there's a lot of talk with NFC, a lot of talk in the press. What is it? What is it supposed to be? What is it doing? Is it secure? Is it not secure? Well, it may surprise you to know no one really claims it's terribly secure. There are lots of elements associated with and connected to NFC that people like to think are secure and are most definitely not. Also, a lot of the attacks you see that claim to be, the YouTube videos you see of, you put your phone down or put a tag next to a computer and suddenly it's owned, are just using NFC as the transport medium. You could have done the same thing with a QR code. You could have done the same thing with downloading a file. NFC really had nothing to do with it other than it was the medium they used to insert the element. There we go. Okay. Sorry. All right. So, as I talk about this, these are my friends John and Larry. Good buddies. They went to Clip Art University together. Right now, they manage competing restaurants in the North End. One day, John, they're both early adopters, geeks like us. So John goes out and gets Galaxy Nexus, fun little gadget with an NFC chip in it. When you look at the config settings, one of the first things you notice is there is a checkbox for NFC. And as my early research started, I'm sitting there going, it's got to be more complex than that. Is it really just yes or no? And as you dig into it, in the case of Android, it really is just yes or no. You either get all of NFC or you get none of it. So in John's effort to figure out whether he wants this checkbox checked or not, goes looking, what is NFC? The more research you do, the more confused you get, or at least that's what I found in my case. If you look hard enough, you will find people talking about Bluetooth and Wi-Fi as NFC, assuming the devices are close enough together. Pretty much a thrown out definition, but near field communication. Devices are near each other, maybe I'm in a field. I couldn't quite figure that out. A lot of the definitions you see start involving ISO specs. 18092 seems to be the kingpin here. It's talking about 13.56. I'm dyslexic, so I usually say 15.36 megahertz. Air core induction transformers, all that, kind of the things we're familiar with from RFID at higher frequency. This one is where you see a lot of NFC compatible, NFC enabled stuff. MyFair cards fall into this, Charlie cards fall into this. Most of your contactless transit systems, door cards, all that stuff, the modern stuff all falls into this bucket. Almost none of it is actually NFC. To do NFC, you have to be exchanging what they call NDEF records, near field exchange data exchange format, or I'm sorry, near field communication data exchange format. It's a very simple, I'll show you in a minute, very simple format for the data records themselves. If you want the NFC forum's stamp of approval blessing you that yes, you are actually doing NFC, you've got to be exchanging data in this format. If you want just close range stuff, you go up here. Yeah?
Can you just include it as an option, or does it have to be the primary?
If you want the official stamp, you've got to actually, the protocol you're exchanging has to be passing NDEF records. A lot of the stuff, payment cards, transit cards, all that jazz, you see NFC compatible devices, NFC enabled devices. That's where we're talking about 092, but they're not exchanging NDEF records. So that's kind of where a lot of the confusion comes in. It's like, yeah, you need an NFC device to do the payment system stuff on the mobile, or to do the mobile app transit stuff, but it's not actually what would be called NFC. So it's actually a very small window of what really is NFC versus what kind of falls into the NFC bucket as far as hardware. Speaking of the hardware, defined by the NFC forum, same guys who bless the standards, there are 4 official tag types. So if you've got passive tags, I've got a handful of them here, just the stickers, the key fobs, credit card size bits. To be compatible with NFC, they have to fit into one of these 4 categories. 1 and 2, types 1 and 2, they're fast. They're very low on feature sets, and they're usually very small. We're talking sub 1K kind of capacity. 3 and 4 come with more crypto capability in the cards. Most of it's not used in NFC itself, but they're more reliable, bigger tags. There is a 5th type. This is actually created by NXP, makes the chipsets, and they make a lot of the tags. And they've decided that they didn't like that their type was not included in the official standard. If you have a device that is using an NXP chipset, very often you can read the 1K series MyFair tags. Keep in mind, if you're going to do something with NFC in the wild, in the field, there are lots of devices that can't read those tags. If they don't have the NXP chipset, most of the time they can't read those tags. There is movement to get this added as the 5th type, but it doesn't automatically make it retroactive in all the devices in the field. One thing to note, if you're going, trying to put together a kit of NFC stuff like I have here, if you go to a lot of, until recently, if you go to like Adafruit or SparkFun and look for NFC, you'd actually end up buying 1K tags. I believe they both changed their wording. They're now saying MyFair tags, but at one point they did say NFC tags, which, if I wanted to get technical, would be incorrect, but life goes on. So after a while of staring at it, I kind of put this stack together. You've got the low-level stuff, the air protocols. There's actually a spec for protocol between the radio and your device. On top of that, over here we've got device-to-device. So holding 2 phones together like those Samsung commercials. 15693, it's called vicinity cards. They work to about 1 meter in normal operation. Sometimes 1.5 meters if you're really good with antennas. 14443, this is MyFair cards. The Felica stuff is actually what would have been Type C, but the ISO rejected the spec. So I've got it here with an asterisk. It's not actually a standard. A is the actual patent-based MyFair. B is a patent-free implementation. So most of the tag types fall into A, if you're looking at it, but there are a few C's. For real NFC, you don't even really get into B. But I put it there. NFC IP2, this spec is talking about when I've got 2 devices with multiple capabilities and you put them together, this is the protocol that's going to decide which of these strategies you're going to use to communicate between the 2. I think it's just added there to confuse me. You've got your card types, you're exchanging NDEF records, and then on top of the NDEF records, the NFC forum also specifies what they call use cases. We'll talk a little bit about the different use cases. These are all pretty well standardized. All right, so for some initial use cases, John buys some tags and decides to play around at home. The handover use case, you put your Wi-Fi details, your SSID and your web key or WPA key, if you're sane, into the tag and say stick it to your coffee table. When your friends come over, they tap their phone to your coffee table, they're on your network. That's a nice convenience, kind of cute. You can also encode an SMS message or a phone call or an email. Hey honey, I'm home. Put it by the door. Something in the fridge to say I need to buy more milk. Send you an email. Remind you. None of these are terribly in need of high security. At the end of the day, this is really what NFC is meant to do. This kind of low key, what's the worst that's going to happen kind of stuff. Other use cases, Smart Poster is really just a text string and a URL. It's intended for your poster at the mall or something. Hey, scan it, and it brings you to a URL. Phone call, SMS, we mentioned that. vCard, and actually any other MIME object can exist within the NDEF format. So you can do a spreadsheet, you can do an image, you can do any of that stuff. Again, that's where, if you see the YouTube videos of how I owned NFC, that's usually what you're looking at, is somebody's got a Word doc with a known vulnerability encoded into the MIME object. They hit it to their computer and poof, their own. Well, yes. That had nothing to do with NFC. There are also non-standard use cases. So depending on the app you're using to write the tag, or the code you're using to write the tag, there are different use cases that don't fall into the standard buckets. Samsung has got an app they call Tactile that offers most of these and other functionality. The key point is that they don't work with other apps. So if you don't have the app that wrote the tag, you don't get the same functionality. So if you were going to use NFC in the field, it's helpful to make sure that you're actually looking at the standard NFC record type and format so that anyone can read it, not just people with your app. The message format is dead simple. NDEF messages are literally just a set of NDEF records. There's no header, there's no footer, there's no nothing. It's literally just stacked together.
What's the delimiter?
Nothing. It's literally just stacked together, one after the other. I looked for an hour and a half because there's no way you don't have delimiter, because I'll show you the record format. It defines size, this is blue field for fuzzing. I'm absolutely sure of it. One very important thing to note: in mobile devices, Android will only look at the first record. So stacking multiple records or stacking multiple functionalities, forget it. If it's not in the first record, it's ignored completely. So that was one of my first. Ooh, let's go down this road and see how far we get. No, nothing. So the record itself is more complex. You've got a message begin bit and a message end bit. So it's trying to tell you whether you're the first record or the last record. Chunk fragment. Each record can hold 4 gigs of data if you have the full address length. If you're going to have more than one, you'll need multiple. You'll need to start setting the chunk flag on every subsequent record. I don't know why you want to do 4 gigs of data, but it's there. So if you set the short record bit, you can remove 3 of the 4 address values, length values. So a lot of the tags you see on the wild only have, are under 255 bytes in length.
Did they add that just to make it more annoying to write a parser?
I believe so.
At 13 megahertz, wouldn't it take something like 6 hours to transit 4 gigs of data?
I say again, I have no idea why you'd want to do that, but it's fine, yes.
Well, I think it's possible. I was just curious, wouldn't it take a hilariously long amount of time?
I think so.
Okay. So I'm not even seeing something.
I can safely say I've never seen that bit set, and I don't think I want to. You've also got an ID length and an ID field. This is intended for caching. So you're meant to put a URI in the ID field so that your device could keep track of tags it's seen in the past and know you don't need to download 4 gigs over the tag again. Very often the ID length field bit is set to 0 and that's removed. We pack up into a nice small, it's all specified and none of it's, I don't know. So finally, you've got the type name format. This is actually where you're telling the parser what the type looks like. So it can be MIME type, it can be, the well-knowns are capital U for URL, capital S lowercase p for smart poster, capital T for text. There are a couple others that aren't really that important. You can make up your own type, you can put a URL in there. They wanted to be extensible. I think they've accomplished that. All right, so not to be outdone, Larry's going to pick up his own device, and he's going to have some fun with John. The tag that was buy milk. Gonna go buy some beer. So, in general, in the wild, these are pretty easy to overwrite. Write protect is somewhat of a joke. You can, if you do your research, find tags that you can buy from the factory, hard-coded with the tag you want on there. If you're putting something out in the wild, that's the best way to go. It's hard to. There are some tags, usually the type 1 and type 2s, that have the one-time program capability. Big caveat. That means you can set, in most cases, most implementations, that means you can set any bit in the tag to 1 exactly once. If I can bit squat your tag to malicious by flipping 0s to 1s, that's no problem. Key-based, I'll talk more about 14443 keys, my fair keys later. Completely and totally hosed, practical, and fits in this handy-dandy Pelican case. Never trust them for anything. On the same format, those cards have 2 keys, a key A and a key B. They also have access bits, so you can say key A can read or write, key B can read or write. If you set up a tag, one of those tags, so that no key can write, currently nobody's found a good way around that. So that's possible. There's also soft write protect. There are apps out there, I swear to God, that set a bit in some of the slack space to 1 if they don't want themselves to write to the tag again later. They set a bit in the data asking the next app to please not write to me. There's absolutely no structure behind it. You stomp over it. You know, if you use something that's not paying attention to that bit, you can stomp over it in a heartbeat.
How's the factory blocking
My understanding is the factory literally ROM codes it, probably laser etches it right in the ROM, and it's. I've only seen a couple of those tags, and they were kind of hard to come by. So there's some things you can do. One of the things is NFC Sec. First of all, it looks like it's pretty well designed. If you've got something more than a really tiny wirelessly powered device. Some Felica cards can do it. It's not very well implemented. It's not, it's not very well used. There's not much more to say about it. Yes?
Just a quick question. Can any reader be used as a writer? I don't think you covered if like a phone can program a card.
Yeah, phone can absolutely program a card. I'll definitely get to that more. I am aware of a few readers that are commoditized to the point where they don't have write capability. They're just literally stripped down so far that they just don't have the ability to write. But that's because they don't have software in them to write. There's no change in the the electromagnetic functionality as far as writing. It's literally just flipping the bits, in a different direction. So in general, yes, just about everything that can read can write, with very rare exceptions. All right, so John's learned his lesson. A little bit more on write protect. Saw this at Logan maybe 2 months ago. Walked by it 3 times before I realized there's actually an NFC tag right here. And they want you to put your phone up there and get, a free ebook or something. It's kind of unfortunate they have to go this far to provide instructions on exactly how to do it. I was thinking about it and realized that, if they put a QR code there, anyone walking by would probably know exactly what to do and not have to worry about it.
In NFC Sec, what's the root of trust? How would the different packages communicated?
I'm sorry, say again?
What is the root of trust for NFC Sec? How would the different packages communicated?
I don't know of it. I got to the point where I realized that nobody's using it in mobile level devices, so I pretty much stopped that. I'll talk to you after I got a little bit on more, but so to kind of combat, yeah, funny story there. So to combat the lack of QR recognition capability, the NFC Forum has produced this lovely guy. In order to use this in a scenario where it's not actually an active NFC tag, I had to call that out. You have to go through quite a few legal hoops to you got to sign up and sign off on their whole copyright thing to use it. I'm allowed to use it in a presentation. But the idea is they're trying to train the user population that when you see this symbol and you have an NFC-capable phone, you need to be waving your phone at this. I'm not entirely convinced that that's what we want to be training people to do, but okay. All right, so another interesting thing that's been discovered over time, if you're out in the wild, if you've got that sign at Logan, and you've got a really nice Felica tag, high crypto capability, really good lockdown, if I stick a topaz on there, that's going to win. Basically, when you put the tag into the device's field, it gets powered up by your mobile device, and this is the case for a passive tag. It goes through its initialization routine, and the first thing it's going to do is announce its auto-collision code, its unique identifier, so that the device can address it. Mobile devices, especially, are only going to pay attention to the first one they hear, the first AC code they hear. So if I slap a topaz tag, which is faster than a Desfire or a Felica tag, on top of that, whatever I put on that tag is going to be what people walking by will read. And it's actually been, we've done some work in our group, and it's pretty repeatable. Yeah, so one of the things we were playing with is the idea of a way to, if you put your tag behind glass, that's a good way to say, to make it very visible that there's a tag in front of it, and shield from behind. This also brings up a cool point. NFC tags, the stickers, are not intended to work on metal. You can buy special ones for use in the industries that the antennas are specially structured so they work on metal. But if you want to put a tag on metal, you have to either buy those tags or put a spacer. About a 1/4 inch seems to work. Okay, so we're having fun with that. Larry's going to try to play with loyalty cards at his restaurant. So he started a new offer. If you buy 3 meals at his restaurant, you get a free appetizer. And his servers all have mobile devices. They can read your card and find out your balance and do all that stuff. Stored value is a real huge mess. I don't know if you guys, the Charlie card incident a couple years ago. This guy is a Suica card from Tokyo. It's based on the Felica standard, and as far as I'm aware at this point, it's actually held up pretty well. Also note that most of these cases, I have yet to see a stored value scenario that is actually using NDEF records. I used to say that Desfire EV1 was holding up well. The last time I said that out loud at a conference, someone reported to me that the day before Chaos Communication Congress had a talk about how it's completely blown. So that one's gone. The moment Felica seems to be holding up well. The general rule of thumb is if you can avoid stored value in one of these cards, do so. That brings us to NFC Sing, which is the idea of adding a NDEF record to the end of your tag containing a signature. A couple minor problems. If you're going to put the trust chain in there, you just blew up a 1-pin card. Yeah, so they haven't solved the chain of trust there. That one I'm sure of. You need big tags for that. And a key caveat that we've noticed is that it only validates the previous. It only validates the records to that point. So it can't guarantee that it hasn't been cloned to another card, just that the data is what you intended to feed it. So that brings me to my toy box here. You can come look at it after. Under $500, you've got yourself a kit where you can do most of the nastiness that can be done to NFC in a tiny little box. Proxmark 3, I'll warn you, the documentation is lousy. The software is sketchy, but it will blow through my fare like nothing else. The PM532, there are a couple different form factors. I like the one that snaps right onto the Arduino. I'll talk a little later. I built a hotel key card cloner with it. Works quite dandy. Specific to certain hotels. It's not here anymore. some cables, stuff like that. That's really all you need. Most of the work I do in my playing with NFC is actually with a mobile device. I'll show you a couple apps in a minute that do most of the heavy lifting. Really, the only time I need something more is when I'm trying to write specific bytes to a card. I haven't found a good app to do that, and I can't be bothered to write one. Or if you need to break like MyFair keys or some of the lower end on the card crypto. Is that a question or scratching your head?
It's a question.
Yeah.
I'm scratching my head sideways now. So, the PM532 is a NFC breakout. Proxmark is a RFID reader. Why do you need the 532?
You don't, strictly speaking, but it comes in really handy. It's nice to be able to, give you an example. I was in a hotel in the Philippines a couple months ago, and they had some really, really good security to the point where the key on the sectors of the card were actually coded based on the UID of the card. So if you read the UID, but it's good and bad. If you read the UID of the card, you can work out the key and read it. Thank you. And with the PM532, it was really easy to write some quick Arduino code and just tap through them. Whereas I'd have to go out and write firmware for the Proxmark.
Oh, okay.
The 532 is great for things like, all right, I want to copy this sector to this card every time. First card copy, second card write. It's great for that kind of scripting, fuzzing kind of work. Strictly speaking, you don't need it. You're absolutely right. So with a kit like that, you can do some pretty basic stuff. I'm going to try to cruise through some of this. All right, so my two favorite apps, Tag Info by NXP and NFC Tag Info, confusingly similar names, two different organizations. I love this guy. If I'm in the field and see a tag, I'm going to open this guy first. The key thing to remember here, if you approach a tag with your mobile device unlocked, it's got a URL, at least the devices I've had my hands on will go to that URL, unless you've opened a reader app first. If you've opened a reader app first, it'll tell you everything that's on the tag. So that's handy. I use that in the field all the time. If you want to play with NFC, it's an NFC Editor plugin for Eclipse. It's great. It's got the nice, you can pull down the structure and tweak the values. Creates a QR code that the NFC developer app will read the QR code, touch it to a tag, and it'll write it to the tag. It's great for just kind of rapid fire, fuzzing and playing with things. There's also the NFCEditor.com. Does exactly the same thing, web-based. All right, so the scenario. My team, the threat research team at Trend Micro, we were all getting together for a team meeting. About once a quarter, we'll get together in the same place. We walked into our hotel. I got to the front desk, and they handed me a MyFair card. I just smiled the whole way to the elevator. Within 10 minutes of getting back to my room, the Proxmark was out. I had the key. I had the key that was locking the sector that controlled the doors. Right away, I could make a copy of my card. Step one, we're talking half an hour. Done. Easy. Step two, break it down and figure out the format. It took a handful of cards sitting around a bar. Luckily, we were in a foreign country and most people didn't know what we were talking about. If you're familiar with Magstripe cards, they have a guest ID that's incremented every time a new guest checks in. Basically, when the lock sees that ID, it will invalidate any card prior to that. The date and time, look very carefully. Notice anything interesting. This is a hex dump. Checked out October 13, 2012.
Wow.
That's what was on the card, I swear. And then the room ID. All good. Worked first. I copied this line to the card. Worked wonderfully. One thing I missed. There's a 1 right there. Any guesses?
How many cards are issued out?
Elevator bit. Got downstairs. Found myself screwed. Thankfully, I had a friend. All right. So I've cloned a card. I understand the code of the card. So now I want to get a room number from a card. So that was my room. This was a colleague's. He gave me his code number. All right, I read it off his card for him. Unfortunately, this hotel used the same key for every card. Every card, every door had the same key. If you knew it, you program it into your mobile device, and you read the cards. It's really that bad. So some quick math. I told him he was in 417. He laughed and went upstairs. Ha ha ha, you're wrong. He came down the next day. The room next to him was a sitting area. If I had gone upstairs and counted doors, I would have hit it. So I consider that a win, slight miss. Finally, you know, we had a guy. We had these three individuals sitting there. Well, all right. 1225 and 1227 were sitting down at the bar with me. 1226 was upstairs doing email. Worked that out pretty quick. Sent his manager upstairs. Knocked on the door. This is where the stories diverge. One thought he heard "come in," and the other one thought he said "coming." He did. Yeah, it's all good, but there was a catch. So I had to guess the guest ID to make that card from scratch. We used it to, it was used to open the door and put in the power slot, like you see at a lot of international hotels. He went downstairs with his room key, which was now invalid. Came back up, didn't work, went back down to the desk. This was the original sector that actually controls the door. This one is empty except for it has this key after the front desk recoded it. So it turns out this is the code. Having this key in there is the code to reset the guest ID. Thank you. So these are my fare cards. We're literally talking under 10 minutes, worst case scenario, to get the keys off those cards. It's practical and it's easy to do. I can teach my 7-year-old to do it. So don't rely on it. It's not a good thing anymore. All right, so unfortunately for Larry, he used my Fair 1K cards, and John had a new promotion at his restaurant. If you buy a meal at John's, you get a free appetizer at Larry's. All right, so the AC anti-collision UID is no longer unique. As far as I'm aware, all the vendors have announced they've rolled numbers. They've rolled ID codes. So don't count on it for anything unique. I've seen a number of applications where just having a card with a given UID means you get either access to the room or it looks up in a database based on that ID. It's trivial to find the right vendor in China, say, and get a card that you can write that UID to. Don't count on it. Mobile devices or the Proxmark can generate that ID on the fly, so it's crap now. My general rule is if I wouldn't lick the tag, I'd use a reader first. Don't use keys. Don't use MyFair keys. Never use the UID. And if you can avoid it, stay away from stored value because there are a lot of people like us out there who have nothing better to do than figure out how to either put more money in or take money out of stored value cards. Any questions?
And what about is it encrypt? What about card?
It depends on the card. Felica and Desfire can do encryption on the card itself. The communication between some of the devices and the reader is encrypted, so that makes eavesdropping harder. But they're not done with very, they're not DH. They're not done very well. So a motivated attacker can get that. The other thing I should mention that I used to talk about is antennas. In general, standard NFC antennas are going to work for about 4 to 6 centimeters, is what they're designed to do. There are plenty of research papers out there, if you look hard enough, of researchers in controlled environments getting 5, 10, 15 meters, either reads or eavesdrops. So that's something to keep in mind. It's not easy, but it's definitely not impossible. Other questions?
What if you were to say, put a Topaz tag in the battery hub of somebody's mobile device?
Is it a mobile device with NFC or without?
Yeah. So each time they would go to tag some or to...
No, anytime they unlocked it, it would read.
Yeah.
It would, so that's another good point. A locked mobile, or at least Android, will not read NFC. I can, there's a whole bag of tags. I can smash all day long. Until I unlock it, it won't read. But the moment I do, it would read that tag repeatedly.
Do most of them come locked or unlocked?
No, I mean literally just punching your code.
Right.
off.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, not like bootloader unlocked, but like literally just
Device.
Yeah, keypad. Yes.
I think some different phones have settings on to whether you have to have the app open or it might even do it if your phone is locked.
That's why I say Android, because I believe it's not BlackBerry. I think there's some Nokias that will actually do it even if the phone's closed, but I haven't had my hands on one. Yes.
Okay, so we've trained Grandma to not click on everything and not open her every link that gets mailed to her. How are we
Working on the
going
same
to
thing.
treat Mom? How are we going to train Mom to not slap her phone against all these cool things that like do these wonderful, give you these wonderful bonuses, especially when you're in the supermarket, you know?
Take their phone, turn it off, and say they don't have it.
Yeah, what is going to get the marketplace to secure, get this at least, because you can't even see what it is, at least in the emails you can see that it's some kind of a link. This way you don't even know what your phone is going to do.
I feel your pain. Checking the NFC off and then locking out the
No, but
security settings.
that's what you do, but I mean, what's going to get the general public at large? Either companies who do this are going to have to get sued, or I mean, what's going to have to? But what has to happen to fix it? What can you think of?
It's a very contentious push. You've got easy, convenient on
Yeah,
one end,
yeah.
and you've got how do we teach people to be secure? And
But they're forcing you more and more to use those stupid
they are.
things.
They're really driving you in that direction because it's as easy for them as it is for you. And that's it. That's why I'm out here at least talking about it, trying to get awareness up that not just the users. We can't make the users all aware of what they need to know. We also have to make the people offering these services aware of how to do it, or at least how to try to do it safely.
Yeah, it's not that people. It's not that people legitimately offering services who have.
No, but those people can do things to make their services harder to
Compromise.
harder to make it legitimate. If I'm running a business and I run around sticking just stickers all over the place to try to advertise my business, that's probably a bad idea.
But they do that.
They do that. They do that. But it's the same. But it's the same thing with the QR code. How do you know what's on that QR code until you read it?
An adversary can still walk around putting stickers all over the place advertising your business.
Yes, but if the good guys aren't doing it, hopefully the bad. Yes.
That's what I want to say though. The study that came out 6 months ago said that no one, even college kids, reads QR codes because nobody gives a crap. There's like 2% of college kids said that they would ever, having done it once, ever reuse a QR code again because they think it's the dumbest thing. Why would this get any more adoption? Now you actually have to touch a germy frickin' poster some way.
You don't have to touch it. You can stay 4 centimeters away.
My hand is
Look what
shaking.
I found here. Here.
Yeah, but nobody. But did you scan it?
Of course not. That's a trusted source. I know. Level up. You can trust them.
I
know them personally.
Nobody would ever break.
So I'm supposed to trust you saying you trust them. Yes.
No, marketing. You want to skip it. That's the direction I can see the advertisers going in. While you're getting something from them, they're pulling information off of you. Is there anything in the spec that would allow for that?
Their end would have to be smarter than the tag. It can't just be a tag. It would have to be a device of some form.
That's why I was wondering.
But it's definitely possible for two-way data transfer.
You want to see that? You want to see what that is?
Say that again.
Can they request a reprogramming of the tag you're scanning? The tag has a request in it, say it's a URL, that when you scan it, it's asking your phone to reprogram the tag. It'll make it do the same thing, but then add information about
That would be entirely possible. You need an app capable of doing that. There's a standard URL. That's certainly
Or VIP reputation.
But how do you know?
Yes.
Yes.
You gotta trust
The
someone.
question is there any way to determine the distance the tag might be, or to like measure how far away the tag is? Like the strength of the
The strength of the field. The problem is you're generating the field.
okay.
So what happens when you're acting with a passive tag? Your device generates a magnetic field. All right. The tag receives its power from that field. When you modulate your signal, when you're trying to send a message to the tag, you modulate, you essentially modulate 100%. The field is on or field is off, and the tag will read that. When the tag's talking back, all it's doing is modulating how much of that power it's drawing.
Okay.
If you had access to, say, the amplifier in the radio itself, I think that's conceivable, but I'm not aware of any chipsets that actually offer it at that level.
So I need special equipment to try and triangulate where the tag was coming from.
Yeah, I think so, and I think the hard part is you're talking about 4 to 6 centimeters, so there's not a lot of space there to even get two antennas to triangulate.
Okay, how much power does it take to fly a tag?
Not much. Second half of the microwave and it's gone. I'm done. Okay. Apparently I'm standing between you and beer.